When you check out at the pharmacy, you see the journey from idea to medicine, thanks to our intellectual property system, or IP for short. IP safeguards inventions, like a new way to prevent seizures or lower cholesterol. And IP supports competition from other brands, then lower-cost generics, which are 90% of prescriptions filled in the U.S. Innovation, competition, lower costs, thanks to IP. Learn more at phrma.org/IP works wonders.
Your data is like gold to hackers, and they'll sell it to the highest bidder. Are you protected? McAfee helps shield you, blocking suspicious texts, malicious emails, and fraudulent websites. McAfee Secure VPN lets you browse safely, and its AI-powered text scam detector spots threats instantly. You'll also get up to $2 million of award-winning antivirus and identity theft protection, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
So, Adam, on a day like today, I'm wondering, do you kind of miss your old job?
No.
No. Adam Kinzinger used to serve in Congress. Maybe you remember him. He's a Republican from Illinois, served on the January 6th committee.
Nope, I don't miss it because it's just out of control now. And I did 12 years, good enough. But now, I mean, you can't even be an independent thinker in Congress anymore. You have to just, I mean, at least as a Republican.
Okay, but the reason why I thought you might miss it is that today we had this congressional hearing about national security. It comes just as some of the country's top national security officials, like the Secretary of Defense and the CIA chief, found themselves embroiled in a scandal over accidentally texting details of military operations to a journalist. You seem to like mixing it up with people. I could see you really relishing a day like today. No?
Yeah, okay, so you got me there. That would be fun.
I wanted to talk to Adam this week because it's been kind of a wild one, right? The story that dominated the news cycle was about how the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, Jeffrey Goldberg, wound up on a group chat with more than a dozen top-level intelligence officials. Totally by accident, it seems. This group chat was one in which explicit war plans were actively discussed, and military victories were celebrated. The story has it all, including the smug satisfaction of realizing top-level officials are just like us in the DMs, especially in their over-eager use of emojis. But the giddiness gets knocked down a few pegs once you consider what these guys are discussing: an imminent attack on Houthi militants in Yemen. Sure, they were chatting on Signal, the encrypted messaging app, but nothing here seemed to adhere to protocol. The story really boiled over because a couple of the people mixing it up on this chat were due in front of Congress this week: CIA Director John Ratcliffe and the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. I wonder, were you able to watch any of the clips of the hearing that went down this morning?
Yeah, I got some of the clips, like some of the highlights.
The hearing will come to order. Welcome.
There were actually a couple of hearings, one Tuesday, one Wednesday. So you can compare how officials answer questions one day to the next. At first, Tulsi Gabbard, for instance, said there was no classified information shared in this Signal chat.
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then
Signal
if there was no
chat.
classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have.
By the time she was sworn in the next day, a full chat log had been published. Operational details and all.
Yes, Ranking Member. My answer yesterday was based on my recollection, or the lack thereof, on the details that were posted there. I was not, and the what.
She really seemed to be twisting in the wind to me.
Really did. And it appears that there are a lot of folks that, if they didn't perjure themselves, they came very close.
What stood out to me was this sense that every person on this chat thread was now out for themselves, because they're all saying slightly different things.
Mm-hmm.
Like John Ratcliffe, the director of the CIA, he was questioned about the chat, and he's basically like, I personally was not texting anything classified. He's like, my ass is covered.
Mm-hmm.
You have Tulsi Gabbard kind of floundering and saying, oh, I misremembered yesterday. And, oh, by the way, I don't know what country I was in when I got these texts. Just really, really tough.
Mm-hmm.
Last night you had Mike Waltz, who's the person who started this text thread, claiming, we're going to get to the bottom of how a journalist got on here, which was bizarre. I mean, I don't love the everyone out for themselves thing. As much as I'm like, it's enjoyable to kind of watch people twist and try to figure it out, the everyone out for themselves thing seems problematic to me.
It does. And this is the Trump administration. I mean, what he does, and I don't even think he hides this, is he turns his people against each other. And so, my wife worked in the first Trump White House, actually under Mike Pence, and she would talk about this all the time, how just nobody trusted each other. And I'm sure, in all the White Houses in history, there's been competition, but there's nothing like this one.
Yeah, I mean, you've been in government, you've been in the military. This technique of everyone out for themselves, like, does it work out in the end?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously not. It doesn't. And you end up basically, it's like everybody being in a house and lighting their own little fire to stay warm. Eventually, all these fires spread and everybody burns down. And I just came up with that, so that may not be a great analogy, but, that's the idea is you end up bringing the whole thing down, especially when it comes to things like national security. It's literally life and death decisions.
Today on the show, Adam and I analyze the group chat heard around the world. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Discover. It's smart to always have a few financial goals, and here's a really smart one you can set: earning cash back on what you buy every day. With Discover, you can. Get this. Discover automatically matches all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year. Seriously, all of it. Discover trusts you to make smart decisions. After all, you listen to this podcast. See terms at discover.com/credit card. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations. So part of the reason I wanted to talk to you right now is that while you're known for your role on the January 6th committee and in Congress, you're also someone who is in the military and talks a lot about national security and how important it is. So given that, I wanted to run some things by you that have come out regarding this text thread, just so you can give some perspective. One thing that I think folks have gone back and forth on in the administration is how protected the information in this thread should have been. Mm-hmm. In the text that The Atlantic published, we can see details about a military operation against the Houthis, including what kind of weapons would be used, including information about why a location was being targeted. Like a Houthi operative's girlfriend lived in an apartment building that was destroyed. The militant was allegedly there. We don't have street addresses where the bombs fell. We don't have names of military officers or targets. So is this kind of information classified? Like, you handled classified, sensitive information. How is it usually handled?
This is among the very highest classification. And let me explain. So first off, when you read there that, the target is leveled, what that says is three things to me, or at least two things to me. That there is eyes on the target, so probably from an unmanned aerial vehicle or from space. So we have technology on the target, but we don't have that kind of resolution to get up close to a face. So that's saying that there is an asset on the ground. That is among the most classified things. So that means there was somebody on the ground, and I'm not saying anything unclassified now because it's out there and the Russians and Houthis know this. That means somebody was there watching. Now you can imagine what that could potentially do to this person. And also, you can imagine how that's going to damage potentially anybody else working with us because this information has been leaked. On top of that, obviously they give the timing of the targets, which if the Russians or the Houthis had known when this was coming, they could have set the proper anti-air to blow up either the MQ-9 or F-18s, which was also listed in this. So everything in here is classified, beyond classified. Look, I operated in Iraq for, again, in part of Task Force 16 and 17. 16 was against al-Qaeda, 17 was against Iranian assets in Iraq, which I couldn't even have said until about 2 years ago. And in that, we would go after specific targets. We worked with the special operations and go after specific targets. I, about half the time, never even knew the name of the people we were going after because that was classified. For me, as an operator with top secret security clearance, I couldn't find out. And only after we got the target, whether it was a kill or capture, even then, sometimes we didn't find out the names of who we went after. This kind of information is among the most secret. The only thing, frankly, that gets more secret than this is when it comes to our nuclear weapons. And so this, being out there trying to pretend like this is not classified is one of the dumbest defenses, frankly, I ever could have imagined coming out of this administration.
I mean, you mentioned, as you talked about this text situation, that, as a congressman, you took security really seriously. So, for instance, if you left the country, you might take a burner phone with you just to avoid having your devices infiltrated. And something that stood out to you was that a couple of the people on this chain, they were traveling. Steve Witkoff, who's the Middle East envoy, he was in Russia. You can also see a couple of numbers for Marco Rubio potentially on this chain, which implies that there's more than one device, which means more than one place to access him. Sounds like that should be worrisome too.
It should be. And look, there was an article not that long ago, a few months ago, that came out that mentioned that Russia was exploiting a loophole in Signal to locate Ukrainian troops. And so Ukraine had to take measures to basically get off Signal or figure some kind of a way to protect against that. Look, I mean, Signal is a very safe app when it comes to, I don't want, I guess average hackers, but if it's the CIA or it's Russia or China or Iran, they probably know how to infiltrate your phone to see what you're seeing on Signal. So the idea that there was no foreign folks watching this is kind of crazy. There easily could have been. Steve Witkoff was in Moscow. Now, he said today that this went to his personal phone and he didn't take his personal phone to Moscow. Now, we just have to take his word for it, but let's say that's true. Well, then he's admitting this was on his personal phone, which everybody's personal phone potentially could be compromised by the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, or nefarious actors. So, I guess that's a decent defense to say he didn't take it to Russia. But again, that's his personal phone then.
Yeah, if it's somewhere off, hiding in a skiff somewhere.
Correct. And I mean, this is, again, by the way, I don't know if your listeners know this, but when you go into a skiff.
That's a highly sensitive room, a room where you can look at classified documents.
Yep, that's where you can go and look. You're not even allowed to take your phone into it. And most of the time, you can't even take a pencil and note writing ability in there.
Huh. I'm kind of curious if any of your old military colleagues have reached out to you in the wake of all this, because it strikes me that they're the people most at risk from leaks of information like this, right? Mm-hmm. And I just wonder if this hits especially hard in the military community.
It depends. I mean, the military is just like your kind of average American, where there are some folks that are blown away and shocked by this, and then some that, are committed to defending Donald Trump to the very end. So I've heard from both, but I think the ones that are calling me my military friends and basically defending Trump on this, they don't have good arguments for it. And their arguments are the media is making this up, or somehow Jeffrey Goldberg forced himself, which I've challenged on Twitter, somebody to screen grab me how you sneak onto somebody's signal chain, because I've never seen that happen.
Well, also, it's even more problematic if that's true, because you have people communicating on Signal where someone could force their way in. Like, that's not great.
Every lie they make and every excuse they make actually opens up something that could be far worse. So yeah, they're not very good at this.
Adam Kinzinger and I will be back after a quick break. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Shopping at Saks is a great way to discover the best new styles and elevate your everyday look, especially when you're short on time. The great thing about Saks.com is that it is always open, 24 hours a day, which means you can browse from the comfort of your own home. Saks makes it really easy to find your favorite brands, and they offer amazing style inspiration. I'm not exaggerating when I say my jaw dropped at the shearling leather biker jacket I found, and that's not even mentioning the Alice and Olivia sequined mini dress I had my eye on. Whether you're refreshing your entire wardrobe or shopping for a vacation, Saks makes it fun and easy. So if you're looking for a fun, effortless shopping experience and you want to elevate your personal style, head on over to Saks. That's Saks.com for everyday inspiration. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Shopping at Saks is a great way to discover the best new styles and elevate your everyday look, especially when you're short on time. The great thing about Saks.com is that it is always open 24 hours a day, which means you can browse from the comfort of your own home. Saks makes it really easy to find your favorite brands, and they offer amazing style inspiration. I'm not exaggerating when I say my jaw dropped at the shearling leather biker jacket I found, and that's not even mentioning the Alice and Olivia sequined mini dress I had my eye on. Whether you're refreshing your entire wardrobe or shopping for a vacation, Saks makes it fun and easy. So if you're looking for a fun, effortless shopping experience and you want to elevate your personal style, head on over to Saks. That's Saks.com for everyday inspiration.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Can we talk about what these chats say about the people in the conversation? Because we so rarely get unfiltered access to elected officials. And I wonder if we can start with J.D. Vance, because he's one of the most verbose people in this chat. He basically argues against attacking the Houthis. And he does that. His reasoning is that the result of this attack will essentially make shipping easier for Europeans. It'll bail Europe out. He also implies that the president himself doesn't understand this ramification of the proposed attack. What did you make of all that?
Yeah, that was pretty eye-opening, because what it first off did to me was confirm that J.D. Vance is a anti-European like he puts on. You know, a lot of the times you can look at some of these folks and say, you know, Marco Rubio is going to go out and say a statement, but does he really believe it? You know, J.D. Vance believes this stuff. I think there is an accurate attack, if you will, against Europe to say it is time to invest in defense, guys. You know, we're not rebuilding from World War II anymore. You're first world countries. But it's different to say that they should pay us for this. This is a very important point, by the way. The United States Navy has taken it upon itself to be the arbiter or the protector of freedom of navigation around the world. So we have not asked Europe to be the ones that go and protect freedom of navigation. And by the way, the Brits have been working with us in Yemen pretty closely, almost every time except this one. When we've attacked the Houthis, the Brits have participated. But we, as the U.S. Navy, has said this is our role. So then to turn around and say, well, now Europe has to pay us for this, or to be angry that Germany and France can't open up, you know, the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, like that is nonsense, because that's not what we have put out. This is a big advantage to the United States, by the way, that we can be the ones to protect it.
It makes us look pretty good.
It does make us look good, and it really helps us to write the rules of trade to benefit us around the world. But yeah, J.D. Vance showed me that this is a guy that's, not super close to Trump, obviously, and he is an isolationist, or at least an anti-European.
Yeah, I mean, Pete Hegseth calls the Europeans pathetic in this in all caps. And to me, he comes across as the one who's like most eager to share operational details.
Yes.
Almost like he has something to prove.
Totally. I'm glad you noticed that, because I did too, which is, look, if I was Secretary of Defense and stupidly got on this text chain with everybody, and by the way, I talked to a prior person that would have been at the same level of Secretary of Defense, I can't give too many more details, who said basically, when it comes to operations like that, there's usually only about 3 or 4 people let in. Secretary of State, Vice President, maybe 1 or 2 others.
We had like 18 people in this chat.
Right? You don't need to bring the Treasury in to a military operation. You don't need to bring Stephen Miller in. But yeah, it looked like Pete Hegseth. I mean, think about it. This guy goes to the Pentagon, doesn't know what he's doing. I'm sure the generals are kind of leading him around, telling him what to do, which is frankly a comforting thought, honestly. And so he's going to be eager to tell all these principals that he's on top of it. If I was on the chain, I would have simply said, we're going to strike. By the way, strike executed. Done. I wouldn't have had to go into all the details to prove who I am.
Yeah. I think we're at this interesting hinge point with this texting story, just because with everything out there and everyone trying to figure out who they are in this, it raises this question of who could be offered up as tribute, like culled from the Trump herd here, which, I mean, first of all, do you think anyone will be?
Yes, I do. I've heard rumors from the inside that Mike Waltz has kind of been on dangling on a string anyway. Now, this is probably bad news because I think Mike Waltz is probably among the more, I will say, normal in foreign policy, even though he doesn't talk like it. He says whatever he needs to impress Trump.
Yeah, you're saying this as someone who's not a fan of National Security Advisor Mike Waltz.
No, I'm not a fan of him at all. And but I'll tell you, I think the hardcore Trumpers inside the White House have had it out for him for a while. But I think he ends up paying the price. And honestly, I'm not going to be sad when he does, because this is the guy that sold out his soul to go do this job, and he's only going to do it for 2 months. The one who should pay the price is Pete Hegseth. I mean, obviously inviting Jeffrey Goldberg onto a Signal chat was pretty stupid.
And that's what Mike Waltz did.
That's what he did. And having a Signal chat was stupid. But then being on that, there were 18 people that didn't notice that there was somebody on there they didn't know. And Pete Hegseth puts out among the most classified information of that moment. And he honestly should pay, but that will be, Trump would have to admit a mistake in putting him in that job. And I don't think he's willing to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you that, to me, Hegseth really comes across as the person who's doing the most in the worst way here. Notably, Pete Hegseth is one of the people who has not been brought in front of Congress to answer for what happened here because he wasn't scheduled to be there. But when he's been asked about what happened here, he just kind of did a word cloud of media bad, Jeffrey Goldberg bad.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include
He blustered through it, and I couldn't tell if that was going to work for him with Trump. Mm-hmm. Trump likes bluster.
He does.
But I don't know if he likes that bluster.
Yeah, I mean, he likes bluster, but he doesn't like it when it's so obviously a lie. Donald Trump would do that. I mean, that's exactly what Donald Trump would do.
But he's the boss.
Yeah, he's the boss. He can do whatever he wants, and he can have his people support that. For Hegseth to get off and basically say on the plane, his first comment was that this is a lie, it never happened. And I don't know if he just doesn't know that the NSC didn't already confirm it. And then to try to, they try to wordsmith and whatever else. And again, America knows better. The hardcore Trumpers are going to look for a reason to believe that this was nothing. And, I suppose the White House will give them enough to hold on to. But the vast majority of Americans are not stupid, and they're not going to buy it.
If some member of Team Trump is culled here, do you think for your colleagues on Capitol Hill, it'll be the end of things?
Yes.
Because traditionally, there would be an investigation into a matter like this.
Yes. And now there's rumors that potentially the Senate has agreed, Republicans and Democrats, to investigate this, or at least they've asked the IG to investigate. But by the way, that information comes out when we're far removed from the emotion of this moment. So we'll hear about that in a year or something like that. But yeah, I think if Mike Waltz, for instance, is offered up, you'll see Republicans say what they've been saying now, which is the White House has taken full accountability and ownership, and it's pleasant to see how these people coordinate in real life.
One thing you've talked about as something that moved you as a member of Congress is your voters. Like, you've talked about how you did things for the voters in your mind that you actually didn't want to do, like vote for Donald Trump in 2020. Mm-hmm. You just thought my constituents want this. I'm going to do that. Which to me means that the voters and the constituents do matter to members of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
I am curious whether you think the voters themselves, the constituents themselves, could help their members see through what's happening with the Trump administration and what that would need to look like.
Yes, and I think it's essential because right now, if you think every member of Congress is reacting to where they have the greatest political fear, and the greatest political fear, speaking of course as Republicans, is Donald Trump and what he and Elon Musk can bring against you in a primary. Well, if the people of your district start making you aware that you do have people in the district that are upset, they're ultimately your voters. Elon Musk and Donald Trump aren't. That's why I've been calling for people to demand town halls, to protest district offices. Don't confront some congressman when he's eating dinner. That always backfires and it's stupid. But, professional protests and getting out there and demanding town halls and demanding answers, that's the kind of thing that for me as a congressman, I actually hated it. And I hated it because I knew I'd have to stand in front of people and give the answers. And I knew a lot of the times the answers weren't popular. And that's what we have to demand. I think until the politicians, until they politically fear their constituents more than they fear Donald Trump or Elon Musk, we're going to be stuck in the same cycle. And I think, we are on the edge of potentially seeing kind of a newborn Tea Party, but not on the left, not on the right, but on people that actually just want democracy and government to work. And I think by August, we could see this thing in full swing.
I mean, I know that I see this signal story one way, and I'm primed to see it one way, and that people who are very committed to Donald Trump are primed to see it a different way. And I know that, you personally know people who are primed to see Donald Trump in a very different way than I do. Your family members wrote an open letter to you saying that you were a member of the devil's army after you criticized Trump. So I wonder if you ever think about those people in these moments that seem shocking to a certain constituency, but not to another, and what it would take to get us all to see the same thing.
Yeah, look, I think about these people every day because, to me, first off, as a person of faith, I watch faith leaders and people that call themselves Christians go out and lie every day and literally do everything that's warned about in the Bible. And I don't understand that. And I see people putting literally Donald Trump up as a god, one of the most flawed, weak men in American history. What is it going to take? Look, first off, I think we have to remember that it's very hard for people to ever admit they were wrong, right? It's hard for people to ever admit that they did something for the wrong reason. And it's ultimately going to have to be pain for them. I think Donald Trump's superpower is the economy. His superpower is his shamelessness. And once that shamelessness backfires, which we're seeing the beginnings of right now with this story on Signal, or once the economy takes a hit and he loses that, I'm a businessman and I know everything appeal, that's when you start to see it break away. But I don't think we're going to see until Donald Trump, passes away someday, quite honestly. I don't think we're going to see his hardest core supporters ever turn against him. But I'll say that and say, I do believe in 10 years, there's not going to be a single person alive that'll ever admit they supported him. And because I think we will someday kind of wake up from a Friday night bender with a Saturday morning hangover and go, what did we do? Lately, we've been drinking Bloody Marys and getting going again. But I think one of these days we'll deal with the hangover.
Adam Kinzinger, thank you so much for your time. I'm grateful for you.
You bet. Anytime.
Adam Kinzinger is a former Republican congressman for Illinois, a member of the January 6th Select Committee, and the author of Renegade, Defending Democracy and Liberty in Our Divided Country. Also, before I go, I want to give a quick shout to Lizzie O'Leary and the great team over at our sister show, What Next TBD. They have been cooking up a very special episode that is dropping tomorrow. If you're at all interested in the Wild West of crypto, you're not going to want to miss this one. So go check it out. All right, that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Ethan Oberman, and Madeline Ducharme. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky. Say, hey, I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.